Canadian film director David Cronenberg established a reputation for combining the psychological with the visceral. The Fly brought him mainstream success, and he followed it with the critically acclaimed Dead Ringers. For his most recent project, Cronenberg has returned to one of his earliest obsessions, William Burroughs' The Naked Lunch. Burroughs' surreal and shapeless cult novel, with its scenes of drug-induced hallucination, has always been considered unfilmable until now. For The Late Show, Cronenberg talked to film critic Kevin Jackson about his obsession with Burroughs and about the seemingly impossible task of bringing The Naked Lunch to the big screen.
Really, my approach was to shift perspective on the project, to sort of move back from the page itself to include the typing machine, and then back a little further to include the man typing it. And what happened was, really not with my conscious intention, but I began to realize that I was writing a screenplay that was about the process of writing the book Naked Lunch, rather than an attempt to do some kind of translation of the book. And that shift in perspective changed everything, so that I no longer had to worry directly about, what parts will I include and what parts will I not. Because the book is so fragmented and hallucinatory, has no plot, has no characters, that it would be just completely arbitrary if you did it any other way. So I had to find a structure, and it was really the life of the writer that gave me the structure, the writer finding himself as a writer, which sounds kind of traditional and boring, but the approach in the film, I think, is kind of unique.
Lee, wake up. This is no time to doze off like a freckled-faced boy on a fishing raft.
What's up?
Now, Bill. No need for that. You didn't think we'd abandon you, did you?
No. Thought never occurred to me.
I probably considered updating it before I started to write it. But there was something about the period, 53, and the fact that I'm discussing in the film the character's homosexuality, which he will not allow himself to recognize, and even his own creativity, which he will also not allow himself to recognize. He's afraid of both of those things almost equally. And I felt then that the era of 53, the sort of Eisenhower repression, was a very proper context to discuss those things, because I wanted to disconnect it from the immediate politics of our time.
You a faggot?
Not by nature, no. I'm not. I wouldn't say faggot, no. However, circumstances have forced me to consider the possibility that...
I'd like you to meet a friend of mine. He specializes in sexual ambivalence.
Sexual ambulance, did you say? Oh my God.
He's called Mugwump.
I wanted the film to be very enclosed. And I didn't want, for example, people to be, the discussion of drugs in the film, which there is immensely in all of Burroughs, I didn't want people to be thinking of Nancy Reagan and Just Say No to Drugs and the Colombian drug wars and crack houses in the Bronx and all of that. So I invented all the drugs, some of which were invented by Burroughs, some of which by myself.
My God, what are you doing?
You were supposed to see this.
Well, now that I'm seeing it, what is it?
I'm shooting up your bug powder. You might like to try it yourself. Or you might not.
I ran out in the middle of a job. You gotta stop using the stuff, Joan. They ration it out like snake bite serum.
Well, just do what everybody else does. Cut it with baby laxative. Roaches will shit themselves to death.
It's the best job I ever had. If I run out again, I'm finished.
It's a very literary high. Very literary.
If you're discussing the mind of a writer, if the film is, in a sense, a meditation on the creative process of a writer, then you are immediately dealing with an interior landscape rather than an external one. And it's interesting that although in Burroughs there are epic scenes, if you take them literally, even when you're reading them, you don't feel as though you're really there watching these huge epic moments taking place. It does feel, it does have an interior feel. And one of the things that I'm always dealing with, struggling with, even in films that have nothing to do with a particular book, is the way that we can create metaphor on the screen, which you cannot do in a literal way, in a literary way, and yet I have a great need to do that, to provide the function of metaphor on screen. In my film, I don't give any of the sex on screen to the actors. I give it to my special effects creatures, because it's the same. It's the trying to find the metaphorical feel of the sexuality in the book and find a way to do that on screen. And if you actually have your actors doing that stuff, it becomes quite another thing. It would not really replicate the effect of the book. A lot of people who imitate Burroughs, or a lot of people who take some things from him, don't really understand that underneath all of this is incredible control and direction and movement. And it really is where the power of Burroughs' writing comes from. And I see that. I think that's one of the things ultimately that attracts me to Burroughs, and I see that in my own filmmaking. People, think of the exploding head in Scanners and all of these spectacular things and say, why do you want to scare people and be so gory and grotesque? And to me, that's not the question at all. It's not the endeavor at all. And I see in my own work that same use of control underneath all the madness. I really relate to it very strongly. Burroughs is maybe most famous to the public at large for having shot his wife in an accident, except that Burroughs doesn't believe in accidents. He really felt that he was possessed by some, what he calls the ugly spirit, and that in fact induced him to start writing. He was in his mid-30s before he started to write. And the idea of possession seemed to me a very important one when I was structuring the screenplay, and I do have that moment of, fictionalized of course, of him shooting his wife.
I guess it's about time for our William Tell routine.
I think the idea of being possessed was particularly potent for me because, in a sense, I was allowing myself to be possessed by the writing spirit of William Burroughs when I wrote the script. I wasn't really aware that that was going to happen. But it was a very strange, spooky, not at all supernatural, but on an artistic level, quite strange to allow yourself to be taken over by someone else's sensibility. And I think that's my ultimate defense when accused of not being faithful to the book or whatever, was that I was completely possessed by the spirit of William Burroughs when I wrote this screenplay.
Oh, shit.
It's really a hybrid. It's as though we got into the telepod together, you know, from The Fly, and fused together and appeared on screen as a kind of creature that didn't exist before, that would neither Burroughs by himself nor I by myself would have created this thing. It's the two of us together. It's in a sense, it is an act of love, this fusion, me and Burroughs.
A Naked Lunch opens on April the 24th.